Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. Today we are doing the piping tutorial I was telling you about on Tuesday, but I had to mix up some videos a little bit. Some due dates got mixed around, and anyway, today is a Feature Friday pattern and I don't have that in the original video, so I just wanted to talk about that real quickly. Today's Love Notion Feature Friday pattern is the Resolution Bottoms. This is a pattern that includes, I think it's 4 different views. There's a legging, a yoga pant or like a flared leg, a jogger, and then like a moto style legging that's in there as well. Comes in the full size range. I've made the jogger version, wear them quite a bit, but that pattern is $5 today only. And when you use the code 10TKS, you will get an additional 10% off that sale price. And today's the last day that we'll be, well, this weekend is the last weekend we'll be using that 10TKS code. Next week, when we hit April, we'll be using the new second quarter code. So you'll want to pay attention to that next week. All right, guys, that is all I have for now. Let's get over to the meat and potatoes of the video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney, and I have a tutorial for you all today. So if you guys missed it, I made the Seamwork Laurel shift dress back in March for my March to Stashify, some of my to Stashify fabric. Just a really easy, simple, basic shift dress pattern, and I wanted to zhuzh it up just a little bit. Number one, I was afraid my pockets were going to get lost on this busy fabric, and so I wanted something to kind of play around with to make that pop a little bit better, because I did want the pockets. I wanted that just as a design detail, and then decided to pull it up to the neckline, and that is adding piping. So I made contrast piping in this orange color here. Yeah, it's just an orange quilting cotton, a real thin quilting cotton that I made my own piping in order to pipe my curved pockets as well as the neckline of my dress. And so I filmed the process as I was going through it. If you are curious and want to know how to create, number one, create your own piping, and then number two, how you sandwich that in between seams. So piping can be really stuck anywhere where there are 2 seams. So as long as you've got 2 seams you're sewing together, you can absolutely stick some piping in there as a nice fun contrast or just a little design detail. I mean, that's the reason we sew, right? In order for us to be able to do these fun little design details and make our clothes our own, which is what I did on this dress. So without further ado, let's head over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how to make piping and then how I used it to pipe both my pockets as well as my neckline. All right, for this tutorial, we're going to need 3 things. We are going to need bias tape, and these are bias strips actually. It's not been folded into anything. No folds have been pressed or anything into it. This is 1.5 inches wide. And the way I get that is my seam allowances for this project are 5/8 of an inch. So I take that times 2, which gives me 1.25 inches. And then I add in, this is actually 3/32, it's close to an eighth, wide piping. So I add that 1/8 of an inch in, which gives me 1 3/8, and then I'm going to add a little bit more for turn of cloth. So that puts me at 1.5 inches wide for my bias tape. And then I've got my cotton cabling. This is a package already open. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, 3/32 to be specific, that I got just in the home deck section of any box store, sewing box store, or Notions shop. So that is cotton cording. And then I've got my piping foot, which is for 1/8 of an inch, as you can see. When I slide it into that groove, that fits just perfectly into that groove. Alternatively, you can use a zipper foot. This is just going to help us sew really close to the edge of the piping, but I'm going to be using a piping foot for this one to show you how extremely easy it is, and you can buy these generically. So if you're going to be doing a lot of piping, I highly recommend adding a piping foot to your repertoire. So let's go to the machine and make some piping. I've got my tape wrong side up. I am setting my piping in the middle. Folding it over so that my raw edges are even. Raising my presser foot, putting that piping right into that groove, like so. Again, my piping or my bias tape was wrong sides together. So now we just sew. This is piping. Good. And we just keep going until we've done our entire length of bias. And once you have finished sewing your entire length, you have got piping. And this should equal, this is 5/8 of an inch from this stitching line to the raw edge. If you have less than 5/8 of an inch, obviously you could either trim your seam allowance to whatever your seam allowance is, or just make it the width it needs to be to begin with. But there is a beautiful piping. Now it's ready to be inserted into the garment. All right, so now that we have our bias tape or our piping made, we're going to need a few other things. We are going to need, these are the places that I'm putting my piping. We've got my piping. I've got my piping foot. We're going to use that to base the piping into place. And then I've got a zipper foot that we're going to use to attach the lining then to sew on the previous stitch line, basically, for that. I've also got my pocket pieces that I'll be putting piping into the side of, as well as those lining pieces. So that is how I've done that, and I'll show you how I do these pockets. So my pocket, I have cut my fabric piece, this entire pocket piece, and I've cut my lining piece just to the fold here. And technically, I probably should have added seam allowance. It's fine. It'll work out fine. So that is how I've cut out my fabric. So we'll be doing our pockets first so we can get those attached to the front. And then you're going to need your front and your back attached to the front and the back attached to the shoulder seams for both the lining and the outer dress. And that is everything. So let's go to the machine and let's sew the piping onto our pockets. All right, I've got my regular foot on right now, but I'm just going to sew my lining and my pocket together at the top. So we'll have a big discrepancy here at the bottom, but that's okay. At the top, and I'm going to leave a, I'm just going to sew, I don't know, like an inch on either side because I want to leave a opening to be able to turn the pocket right side out when all is said and done. I've got 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on this pattern, but I'm only going to sew this top one at 3/8 of an inch because I technically don't have seam allowances that I added in here. So my pocket will probably end up a little shorter than what the pattern recommends, but that's okay. All right. So now I'm just going to go over to the pressing table and press that open. So the parts that aren't sewn, we'll just be giving it a good press. That'll help when it's time to close those up at the end. So do that with both pocket pieces, and then we'll come back here to attach our piping. All right, so I have pressed that open, and then I went ahead and just pressed my lining to the wrong side, just so I can get a good crease here at the top, and gave that a good press. So, I mean, obviously we'll be sewing up the sides, but that way I know exactly where the top of my pocket is, right at that fold. So now we're going to pull our lining up out of the way. So now I know that that fold is right there at the top of my pocket. And now we are going to attach our piping. So I've got my piping foot on here. And I'm just going to line up the raw edges of my piping with the raw edges of my pocket. And I've gone way above my fold here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sewing here, and then we'll come back and, well, actually, maybe we'll just do it now. We're going to take our piping and we're just going to fold it kind of over on itself right at that fold line that we have pressed in. Okay. Then we're going to stick it under here. maybe kind of weird up here at the top just because we've got that fold over. And now we're just going to sew this in place, going very slowly around these corners. This is a pretty tight corner. I'm also doing this with a tripod in my face. It could be helpful to, at this point, to also clip into your seam allowance there on your piping, just to make this a little easier. In fact, I'm going to do that just really quickly. I'm just going to clip to, but not through. We will clip all of this, including the pocket pieces, here in a second. There we go. So as we are coming up on this other side, if you want to go ahead and just cut some little clips in there, don't get quite to that stitching line. And then when we get up here to our other side where that fold is, I'm just going to fold this back on itself at a 90-degree angle, right at that fold. Just like so. And now we can clip off our excess piping. Just like that. Okay, so you're going to do that on both pockets, and then I'll meet you back here to sew that lining in place. All right, I've got my zipper foot on. We've got our pocket. I'm going to take my lining, so we'll be going against that fold that we pressed in, which is fine. And I'm just going to press it, or not press it, pin it in place, making sure that all that flange of that piping is going the correct way. There's nothing more annoying than flipping your project right side out and finding that some of your little tape pieces here got caught on the right side, and then you have to unpick it. All right, now we're going to sew from this side, and we're going to follow our previous stitching line here. So I am lining up my needle here. My pins are on the wrong side, but that's okay. And we're just going to stitch right along that previous stitch line. Okay, now our final step is going to be to clip our corners. Help that turn nice and neat. You can clip your top like so, and then we're going to turn it right side out through that opening that we left in the pocket. And use the kind of hold it a little bit. Now you can go give that a good press, top stitch your top in place, and even, gosh, if you want, you could even fold that up like so. Top stitch that in place, and that closes up your, fold your seam allowance up there. Top stitch that in place so it closes out your top, and then it's ready to stitch onto the front of your dress. Let's now do the neckline. Okay, before we put our lining on, let's just go ahead and baste this in place around our neckline. So I'm starting at center back, and I'm going to sew all the way around the neckline to the other side of center back. So I've got my front and back attached at the shoulder seams. My backs are completely separate at this point. So we are going to start. I've got my piping foot on. Start here at one edge. If you want to push it off just a little bit, just to make sure that you don't run short, you can totally do that. And we are just going to sew around the neckline. Going little by little, making sure that that seam allowance there at the shoulder seams is laying flat. There we go. We will clip into this neckline, but not until we get our lining attached. So now we've got our piping attached to our neckline. All right, let's start attaching this lining. All right, so we've got our neckline that's sewn on. We are going to place our lining right sides together. We're going to pin it in place. Okay, now we're going to go over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew with our dress side up. So we're going to follow along that previous stitch line. Let's go do that. Okay, we've got our zipper foot on. We're going to start at one end. So the center back of our neckline, and we are sewing right along that previous stitch line. I'm just going to stick my hand under here to make sure that I'm not catching my lining weird. Okay, once that is secured, we can now make sure we don't have any pinches or anything caught. Let's go around and trim our neckline. Okay, now we're just going to clip our neckline to, but not through that stitching line, anywhere where we've got a curve about 1/2 inch apart. Most of that is going to be in the front neckline. Just go all the way around. And once you have clipped, you can now, you don't really need to understitch because this piping is going to keep that lining away. But now you can go give everything a good press. And you've got a beautiful neckline. There you have it. Now you can finish the dress per normal, and you've added piping into some really fun key areas. Let me know if you have any questions down below. And there you have it, a pretty easy technique, but something that's a lot of fun and can be a great way to bring in some extra colors or, again, just a little added detail to any of your garments. I hope you have found this helpful. if you have any questions, please leave them down below, and I'm happy to get to those as soon as possible. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you get some sewing in, and I will see you next time. Bye.